Good morning. I'm Chris with Everyman Overland, and I'm here in the shop this morning, and it's raining outside, so hopefully you can hear me. It's a little noisy with the raining. You see out the window. We're here in January of 25, and a whole bunch of my friends are up at Windrock right now, and they're out there playing in the snow and having a good time, and I couldn't make it there, so instead, I started a project with a whole bunch of lights. So just real quick, as we get this video going, I just quickly want to acknowledge this is our 100th video. 100 videos, right? We've been doing this for not quite 3 years yet, but this one is number 100. Just a couple weeks ago, we surpassed 3,000 subscribers, and that might sound like absolutely nothing to a lot of the guys out there or a lot of the people that are watching, but I got to tell you, it really feels like an accomplishment to me. Marla's very happy. We're very proud of what we've been able to put together for you, and we really do thank you for all the time that you've spent watching and following us, and to all the subscribers and everyone else out there. And that's it. So hey, here's to 100 more. Back to the show. So I have to move so you can see them all. I bought all of these lights. Now this is actually 5 sets of lights, so 5 pairs. So I've got 10 individual lights. These are, for all intents and purposes, the LED Light Rob 2 Pro. You can see that they actually come with different lenses on them. This is the diffused lens. You can kind of see in there, it's got a whole bunch of flutes to the lens that really disperse light just kind of everywhere. This one, it's a little harder to see because we only have just so much light in here. This is the spot lens, right? That lens that's in there that, you know, has that real aggressive dome to it, just throws light way down range, and it just makes it makes just a round like spot, exactly like it sounds, just a spot of light out there. And then with the diffuse, this sends them out more. And one of the great things about these lights, and I'll get into the cost and everything else in a second because that's also pretty good, is you can order from LED Light, you can get these replacement lenses. This is one of the lenses that's actually offered through LED Light. So this one, as you can see, is a floodlight. Now, this looks very similar, kind of in basic shape, to the dispersed light, but you can see that the dispersed has all of those flutes in there. This one does not. What it does have is it's got like that little dot right in the middle that will throw a little bit of light downrange and a little bit of a spotlight, and then the rest of it is all angled, so it will send out the rest of the light kind of off in an angle, so you get a little bit of both. I think this is more what you refer to as like a driving lens. This is what I would refer to, the disperse is what I would typically refer to as a floodlight. This just puts light everywhere. I mean, it just puts light everywhere. They say it actually has a light spread of like 170 degrees, which means the light's coming off at like this. I mean, it's just everywhere, right? And of course, the spotlights do what spotlights do, and they only give you light right there in the middle. So my plan for having 10 of these is to create basically like a light bar that goes up across the front of Janky. We're gonna put them underneath the roof basket. I'm gonna mount them to the bottom of the roof basket for a couple reasons. One, it keeps them very protected. So if I'm driving through the sticks, whatever, I don't have tree branches and trees trying to run into them, knock them off. Number 2 would be, I'm very sensitive because I'm particularly tall, so I sit up pretty high in the truck. I can see my whole hood. So anything, any ditch lights, any big spotlights, anything that shines on the hood is extremely distracting to me. And I know there's lots and lots of arguments. People love to talk, oh, it doesn't matter, it shines on the hood. I don't like it when it shines on the hood. So I'm gonna mount them in a fashion where it doesn't shine on the hood, right? And putting them underneath that roof basket will allow the front of the roof before the windshield to kind of act like a shade, if you will, for the hood. Plus, I just think it looks cool down there. But what I'm gonna do with these is, since I have 5 sets, right, I have a total of 10 individual housings, is I'm gonna run 4 of these with spotlight, I'm gonna run 4 of them with the floodlight, and I'm gonna run 2 of them all the way on the outsides with dispersed light. I'll probably actually angle those dispersed out a little bit. And then I have another couple sets over here. I got one in yellow to use like a chase light that I'll mount going directly backwards. And then out on the rear corners, I'm gonna put another set of white diffused. And the white diffused, I may actually end up putting a couple up on the sides of the truck as well. That white diffused is going to end up like scene lights or camp lights, which are gonna be way too bright right now. But another company has a new D-switch coming out that, from what I've seen, will allow you to dim whatever set of lights that you want. So you could use like, oh my God, bright spotlights as like little dim running lights or whatever. You can dim everything down. So if I can take these lights and mount them as, you know, scene lights, whatever you want to call them, and then dim them down for camp, That'll be perfect. That's kind of dependent on that new product coming out, which is supposed to be released in the first quarter of this year. I think a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, so that's what we're going with. So these lights, which I say are, for all intents and purposes, the LED Colite Rob 2 Pros, right? You can see it does not say Colite on it. These lights are sold on Amazon, and I'm trying here, as Mayello, right? Mayello, I'm not sure how you want to say that. I got these things, they have them on the website. I don't know how long they're going to keep this up or how long these people will keep selling them. Maybe LED Colite comes in and buys them out like, hey, knock it off. Stop selling our stuff so cheap. They retail these at $39.99 for a pair with just with the end pigtail like this, without the whole switch wiring setup, whatever. $39.99. And then they give you a $10 off coupon. So, yo, $30 a pair. I'm going to grab two of them so you can say, there you go. There's 30 bucks right there for a pair of them. This is the only wiring it comes with, just the wires that come off the back of the lights. But I plan to do all my own wiring, and that's actually what I'm doing here is I'm gonna make the wiring harness, so I don't care if it only comes with a little bit of wire. If you wanted, you can buy for another 10 bucks, and it comes with the whole wiring harness with the switch and everything else. 30 bucks, you can get a pair of lights. 40 bucks, you can get a pair of lights with the switch already installed. I just have no use for the switch. You can get them in either diffused or you can get them in spotlight. So that's kind of what I ordered, a few of those. However, then you go on LED Colite's website and you can order these replacement lenses for like $6 a pair, and you can get them in spotlight, floodlight, or diffused light, and you can get all three of those in white or yellow. So if you want to change what you've got, like you set something up, you're like, I think this is what I'm going to be like, well, it didn't really work out. You just order another set of lenses for $6 and smack them in there. I'm pretty stoked about this. I think I'm gonna end up with a really neat light bar, and I'm gonna be into it for like 200 bucks. I don't know how you beat that. Okay, so here's some of the stuff that I bought to complete the wiring harness. And this, I actually already had this. This is just some 12 gauge, I mean, you could call it speaker wire. It's not really speaker wire. It's just doubled up wire so that you get the positive and negative on there. 12 gauge sounds pretty big for just like, you know, these things are only like, you know, they pull 3 amps a piece or something like that. Well, there's 10 of them, right? So as we wire this up as a harness, you got to keep in mind the total load on this is going to be right around 30 amps. So going from where the switch is or where the power source is all the way up to like the first light, you got to have enough wire to sustain that 30 amps. Otherwise, you're going to start setting things on fire. If you just tried to wire everything up with, you know, like, oh, well, these lights come with this size wire, so that's all you need. You just put a little thing. Now, that right there, line 10 of those up, stuff's going to catch on fire. I guarantee. Next, I bought a whole bunch of these 2-wire, or you could call it 2-pin Deutsch connectors. I think you pronounce it Deutsch, but this is just a waterproof connector that whatever, this goes in here. So obviously one end of this is going to go on the harness. The other end is going to go on the light. I think I'm probably actually going to put this on the light and I'll put this one on the harness, but I guess, it really sort of doesn't matter. It's going to be up there plugged in its whole life anyway. But I wanted to have a nice waterproof connection to the light. Next thing I got is a whole bunch of these things, and they refer to these as speaker pan. Big wire goes in that end, and then 2 wires come out this way. And what I'm going to use these for is where the main wire connection is in here, and then you've got 1 wire that goes out to the light, and then the other wire goes on, you know, keeps going down the harness. I will be able to cover up all the junctions with this. In the product description on Amazon, I think that these are heat shrink. Now we're gonna find out here in a little bit when I start building the thing, and the first time I try and heat shrink one of these, I think these are heat shrink. The kit also comes with a whole bunch of heat shrink here. So in the description, the actual so in the description, I may have just gotten confused, and the actual speaker pants, like this rubber part, is not heat shrink, but it comes with a whole bunch of heat shrink, so you can just put that over the ends. But one way or another, I want to try and keep this as waterproof as possible because it's just going to live up on the roof, and just like it's raining outside right now, they're going to get rained on all the time. Next up is I bought a large high amperage 3-pin connector. Now, this actually comes with 12 gauge wire, so I can run all 30 amps through this and it won't be a problem. So this connector is gonna go up underneath the roof rack so that if I ever need to or want to remove the whole roof rack, I can disconnect the whole wiring system right here and then plug it back in. I bought this with, like I said, with the large 12 gauge wiring, so it will support all of the amperage that I need. There's a couple ways you could wire this up. Now this has 3 wires in it, right? So I could use one for positive and one for negative, and then I've got one left over to do whatever I want. What I'm gonna do with this is these will all be positives, but they will go to different sets of lights. So one of these is gonna go to the light bar, one of these is gonna go to the chase lights, and one of these is gonna go to the scene lights, the camp lights, whatever. So I can wire all three of these up at the switch, and then I just ground out the lights on mounting screws or whatever it is, and that'll work just fine for the negative end of things, but that way I can run three different sets of lights off this one connector. And then lastly, of course, I have, heat shrink butt connectors that I'll be using. I really kind of went over in my head. I've been trying to decide if I'm gonna solder everything together or use these butt connectors. At the moment, I think I'm gonna use the butt connectors. If I start assembling things, I'm like, man, this ain't gonna work the way I wanted it to, then I'll bust out with a soldering iron and I'll start soldering things together. And I bought some of this wiring loom harness tape so that once the whole harness is all together, I can take this stuff and kind of wrap it all the way around the wires so that everything has kind of a soft texture to it. Being outside, I don't know how important that is, but hopefully it makes it look a little nicer and keeps, again, a little bit more of the water out. Now I guess it's time to just get started making all this. So I just thought I'd show you real quick, just part of the process here so you don't have to watch me do every individual step by itself. This is one that has been completed. You can see I've got the wrap all the way on that. And what that consists of is I have cut down the factory wire that comes out of the lights, because you can see that that factory wire coming out of there is extremely long, right? We don't need all of that. So I cut this down to here, right? Strip it, put some connectors on it, and then I just take one of my Deutsch connectors, put a little bit of heat shrink on there, so after I crimp these, and then I heat shrink the butt connectors, this will slide over here and just kind of heat shrink everything together, making sure that it's as waterproof as possible. And then I'll take the tape and wrap it around, which again, gives you this kind of finished product here. So there's actually heat shrink underneath. You can see right here, this is where the connector's at. Again, it just looks nice, it looks complete, and that wire is gonna be plenty long to interface with, I don't know, with like the truck next to me. It's still really long, but that will be able to give enough room in the harness to kind of move the harness wherever you need to move it to. That's kind of the steps with this is I cut down the wire to make it a little bit more manageable, put some heat shrink butt connectors on it, and then I'll heat shrink those and then slide this larger piece of heat shrink over that connection, heat shrink all of it, and put the tape on it. I'm gonna do this, I've got 1, 2, 3, so I'm gonna do this like 6 more times, and then I'll get into actually making the harness for it. So now that the pigtails are on the lights, now I've cut 5 10-inch lengths of the 12 gauge wire, which I'm actually gonna end up splitting in half. Like these, it's kind of like speaker wire, I don't know, molded or glued together, whatever it is. I'm actually gonna peel that apart because I'm gonna build a positive side and I'm gonna build a negative side, just due to the fact that like these speaker pants, as they like to call them, I still think that's funny as hell. I can have a full run, have everything covered up, have everything be real nice, and have a positive side and then have a negative side to the harness. And then just like I've done with the lights here, I'll wrap everything in this fabric tape, probably throw a few zip ties into it, and then wrap this tape around it so that the harness is kind of all one piece. Hopefully everything goes together real nice. Everything stays very sealed so that the water doesn't get in there and corrode things, because that makes things not work. So I'm gonna go ahead and split all this apart and get to building. All right, so just kind of want to show you this whole mess and how I decided on doing things, being able to figure it out. We're starting down at one end because the end all the way that terminates at one side, so the power comes in from one side and then it just kind of runs out at the other, right? So this is the end that kind of runs out. So you can see that the two different lights, okay, so you got one light and two light, right? They separate off, and then you've got these speaker pants in here. I've got heat shrink on there that keeps everything sealed up. There's a butt connector in here that is a heat shrink butt connector, so I heat shrink that to itself and then pull everything back into the sock, and I've actually got 2 different sizes of heat shrink on the end here to make sure that this seals up to there, right? So this end is done. So let me kind of show you how all of this goes together. So if you're trying to build this yourself, you're, okay, I see you put this here, you put that there, all right. Okay, so as the power, or the ground, whichever side it is, right? So as the power comes out of, this terminal, goes up into here, it just goes into a singular butt connector. And then I've used another, one of the 10-inch stretches of power wire or ground wire, whatever it is. And then I took, so I have a whole ton of these things, I cut all of these lines off of the end of the lights, right? And each one of these has 2 wires in it and some really good insulation on there. But that insulation you can actually slide off. You can pull it off. So you can see here that these 2 wires, one of these will go to one light and one will go to the other. Doesn't matter that they're black and red. It's the same wire on the inside. We're gonna wrap them with tape. Nobody's gonna be able to see, but this will go to one side. But this will go to one light, that'll go to the other light, right? And then this wire here goes on to the next pair and the next pair, and and you keep repeating this so that you end up with a whole harness. So on this large one, I've got one piece of heat shrink here that will cover that up. And again, these 2 wires here and this wire are all twisted together. You can't really see the other end of it, but they're on the other end of that crimp connector. So once you get that all crimped together and then you heat shrink that down, you pull this down so that everything is snug within the speaker pants there. And then I have 2 pieces of heat shrink here. They don't have to be very long. This first one is big enough that it actually fits over the speaker pants like that, right? And then once you shrink it down, this piece will then fit over that. And then you end up with what I have here. So it's all fairly complicated. It took me a couple minutes. Well, what if I put this here and put that there and whatever? You can also see that I have cut these speaker pants down a little bit. Like I cut the legs off them because the legs were a little bit too long. They just don't need to be that long. It's nothing really wrong with them being that long, but they don't need it. And I think this will work out. I like the way it looks better. So now I need to finish putting all this together and then do this, what, like 3 more times or 4 more times, and then I'll have a harness. Yay. All right, so here we are. This is it. This is the completed, well, I don't even know how much of that you can see, but that's the completed harness, one end to the other. I left the power and the ground just kind of open here at that end because I don't really know until like it's all mounted up on top of the truck. Not really sure how long the ground is going to need to be, how long the power is going to need to be. Plus this guy here is going to plug into the power, and so we got to figure out where all this stuff is going to go once everything's up on the truck. But with a little bit of planning and just a whole ton of work, like I'm not kidding you that I probably got 5 hours into this, right? I mean, from wiring up all of these lights and doing the thing, and then all of this mess here. But now I have a wiring harness that looks just a whole lot like it was custom built for my vehicle, because it was custom built for my vehicle. And once it's tucked up in there, everything's going to be real nice. I'll be able to click everything into place and then just kind of zip tie this up away because it's got this cloth wrap on it that you can see there. If it gets any kind of rattling, bumping, bouncing going, it's not going to make as much noise because it'll have a soft impact. And that's really kind of what this tape is meant for. You're supposed to use it on wiring harnesses like this inside your vehicle, so it goes through doors and things like that. It's not rattling around. Really, like I say, I just use this a lot just to kind of contain it, so everything was all attached and so it all looks like one piece. But the fact that it won't make as much noise if it bounces around is also good. So now that this is done and I've smashed my fingers and my fingertips hurt. I hurt my thumb. I got an owie. So now that that's taken care of, I need to go in and change all of the lenses to be the lenses that I want. I want to say, the way they were selling these on Amazon, I was only able to get 2 of them that have the disperse, which is kind of that fluted lens like you see here. So most of them are spot lens. And so I need to go in and swap out the appropriate ones and make sure I have everything that I want. So I'll swap those out. It only takes a minute, and then I'll bring the truck in and I'll get things mounted up. So to change out these lenses, you can see super easy. There are 6 screws on the front of it. You loosen those up, which I've already done. I thought I'd done. So you take the cover off. Just leave them screws in there and hope we don't lose them. And then the lens just sits in there. So you just lift it out. We're going to change it out for this lens here, which just drops in. You want to make sure that this O-ring that goes around here, you can actually see it's kind of that rough texture. What you want is that texture to be up against the back of the plastic. That'll give you your best seal. So you just take that, put it right in there. Once you know that O-ring looks good, which it does, drop the lid back on and tighten the screws in. Now, as you're tightening these screws in, you can remember like this is an aluminum housing, and it is. Like this is a cast aluminum housing. Like this thing's fairly nice. You don't have to kill the screws. They're not going anywhere. They got no plans, whatever. So you don't have to over tighten them, because if you over tighten them, they're threaded into the body. rip those threads out. Now what are you gonna do? You order another set of lights, that's what you're gonna do. So yeah, that's how you change these lenses out. And you can see it's so easy to do that you can do it here in the shop or after they're mounted up on the truck. If I'm like, well, I didn't really like it that way, I don't have to unbolt the entire light. I can just come in here and change the lens out to something else. Or if I ever decide that I want to go with a yellow lens, they're very interchangeable and it's very inexpensive to interchange these things. I think it's a fantastic design. I'm going to change the rest of these out and then we'll get the truck in here. Okay, so here's what I came up with. This is kind of the only angle I can get you from so you can see everything. It turns out there just isn't enough room, and I mean just barely, to get all 10 of them like side by side underneath here. What are you gonna do, right? It is what it is. I needed about another inch to be able to get everything in there. And even if the lights were like hang off the side, it's where the mounting bolts need to go to hold them. So I've got them so that the mounting holes are actually 5 1/8 inch apart from each other. And I have them on a, I don't know what it did, 10, 12 degree slant, something like that. I just kind of chose where I thought would be best for the first one. And then I took a look at what would be good for the last one. Like, all right, I kind of like that angle. I like the way that works. And then I just took a straight line between the two, measured it off, drilled the holes, and you can see that they fit there. And then I don't know if you can really see it up here because you're probably looking at the side of it, but I have that last, so number 9 and number 10, right? I have that last diffused one up here, and it's actually going to be aimed, I don't know, probably 30 or 45 degrees off of center. And I may at some point just incorporate these onto the same switch with the ones in the back and just use these for scene lights. I'll see how they look when we're driving. That's where we're at. I'm going to get back to drilling. All right, they are all in and they are wired in and they are, I mean, they're too bright to look at. And my guess is it just blew the lens out completely and you probably couldn't see anything. But they're up there, they're wired in, and everything's good to go. Now I just gotta kind of finish tying everything up, tighten everything up, get everything aimed, and we'll be good. And then it'll be time to wait for the sun to go down so I can go out and test them. So, see how many people we can blind tonight. All right, so standard headlights, high beams off, light bar off. These are the Trailblazers, and that's the light bar. All right, so now we have a little bit more distance here, be able to kind of light things up. So again, low beams, high beams, light bar. Oh, and a car. He probably didn't like that. And light bar. I don't know how well this is going to come out, but like the light bar versus the Trailblazers, you can also see there's a big color difference between the two. So the light bar is coming in, I would call it right around 6,000K, and the Trailblazers really kind of come in more around, if I had to guess, I would say they're probably about 52 or 5,300. So let's see those Trailblazers. Those are probably 52 or 5,300. You can see the much softer looking light versus the light bar is a lot more blue. It's a lot brighter of a white color. And like I say, I really hope that the camera's picking this up for you guys. But just look at the amount of coverage. Look at how when I turn this on or turn it off, the whole world lights up. You know, you compare that to a standard set of ditch lights, which I'll turn on here in a second. So when compared to a standard set of yellow ditch lights, I mean, you can see we're getting a little bit off on the sides over there. But look at how far off to the sides, and hopefully it's catching it, how far off to the sides these things shine. Bright, I can see everything. There's no glare on the hood. Really, really happy with this. And there you go. That is my Linkable Light Bar for what I got in this thing, like 200 bucks. I haven't actually done the math on it to tell you exactly to the penny how much I spent on it, but I will put a link to all of the pieces, components, all of the plugs, everything down below, everything I got off of Amazon, right? I had a little bit of the wire still hanging out, still left over from a different project, but I'll link everything down below so that if you want to repeat this process with either this light or a light very much like it, or a different light, or a great big square light, whatever, you can do that. Just change out to a different light and you can repeat this process. I've been running these for about a week now. I really like the fact that I was able to use both spot and flood, and then of course with the dispersed up here on the side, that when I turn the light on, I don't just get like one big bright spot way down there, right? It's able to provide enough light generally and spread out that the entire world lights up when you turn these on, and you can see absolutely everything, but you still get a lot of distance out of it. So if you are going at a higher speed, you can see a lot farther if there's going to be a deer poking out, or you're worried about some kid running across the street, or potholes, or whatever it is. And then of course, with the dispersed lights up on the side, you couldn't ask for a better ditch light, right? Everything up off on the side of the truck lights up. You can see the whole world. It really is nice. So again, like I say, go out and make yourself your own linkable set. Linkable, right, is what people are calling them nowadays. I think they actually call them linkable, not because they're plugging them in together and running just a whole bunch of lights, but because they actually bolt together. But the set that I wanted, which is probably pretty nice, from LED Co-Light, and these are some of the cheaper lights, it was like almost $600. I just don't have $600 to do that. But I was able to find these and put all this together for a couple $100, and I'm sure if it doesn't perform every bit as good, it's so close that it doesn't really make a difference. And now I have exactly what I'd wanted. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate all the love and support and all the comments and everything. I love being able to interact with, I would say, fans, but I don't know if anybody's really so much of a fan, but I like being able to interact with you. I like meeting you guys out on the trails. All this is great. If you're looking to kind of support the channel, check out our Patreon. We're Everyman Overland on Patreon. Help provide for more projects a lot like this. Of course, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on nothing. But we'll see you on the next one.